I always really liked the fishing minigame in Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. In the middle of your big, bombastic, sword and sorcery fantasy adventure, you could just take a little break and do some fishing, and it was really kind of delightful. Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess greatly expanded on that fishing game, with a bunch of different lures that worked in different ways, and a bunch of different fish with different behaviors, and you had to do things a little differently to catch each one, and sometimes catching a fish became a real back and forth struggle, where you had to pull the line this way and that way, and let the line tension go at the right time. And it was even more fun in the Wii version with the motion controls. All this is to say that I've always wanted to play a good fishing game, especially on the Wii, because the motion controls seem like a perfect fit for the action of fishing. So I was pretty excited to play Rapala Tournament Fishing, which is the first ever fishing game released for the Nintendo Wii. Rapala Tournament Fishing was released in North America on November 21st, 2006 for the Nintendo Wii, one of the first ever post-launch games released, and as stated earlier in this video, the Wii's first ever fishing game. Rapala Tournament Fishing was developed by Fun Labs, a Romanian studio, who have developed 1,000 different Cabela brand hunting games, including about a dozen that were released for the Nintendo Wii. So we're going to be seeing a lot of Fun Labs on this channel. The Wii port of the game was developed by Magic Wand Productions, and I couldn't find a lot of information about these guys, except that they're also Romanian, and also worked on a few Cabela games, including a few on the Wii. Rapala Tournament Fishing is very simple. There's no story, no campaign mode, basically no progression systems at all. It's just you, a boat, a fishing rod, a bunch of lures, a bunch of fish, some pretty fun music, and a guide. That guide is the absolute best part of the game. He's the guy you can see excitedly jumping in the air on this menu screen. For the entirety of your time in Rapala Tournament Fishing, you are accompanied by this guide, who will comment on everything you do and occasionally give advice. His commentary is sort of delightful because he is almost always enthusiastic and encouraging. He's like the ideal video game daddy, always telling you what a good job you're doing, and wow, that was the fish of a lifetime. And don't worry, just take it easy. There's no need to get stressed about it. It's just a fish, and you got all the time in the world. He even says that last one when you're literally on a time limit. It's kind of bizarre. He remains bubblingly positive even when you're performing poorly, which makes it seem like he's mocking you. Also, his advice is inconsistent and kind of useless. There were times when I would cast to a particular spot, and the guide would be like, "Count to 3 and try again," which I assume means he thought it was a bad cast. And then I'd cast to the exact same spot again, and he would be like, "I bet you got it right on top of them that time." And I'm like, well, which is it, dude? So the guide is sort of delightful in a goofball cheerleader sense, but he's also completely unhelpful from a gameplay perspective. Speaking of gameplay, I found the gameplay in Rapala tournament fishing to be baffling and bewildering a lot of the time. There is no tutorial and no explanation of any of the game's mechanics anywhere, or at least not any that I could find. I think because it is a simulator, and so simulating real-world fishing devices and mechanics, the game expects players to already be familiar with those real-world devices and mechanics and how they function. But if you're like me, and you're not familiar with any of that, you're just gonna be confused. And it's kind of the game's job to explain to you how the game works. Casting works great. Hold your controller back and throw it forward. Awesome. Perfect. Reeling in the fish mostly works pretty well. Swing the controller in the direction you want to reel the fish in, though sometimes the fish escape from the hook or the line breaks, and there doesn't seem to be any explanation for it, or at least no reason the game will communicate to you. What's even more frustrating here is that when a fish gets away, a lot of times the guide will literally say, "Geez, what do you think went wrong there?" And like, I don't know what went wrong, dude. That's what you are supposed to tell me. You are the fishing guide. You are supposed to be explaining how all this works. Also, the fish will spend a lot of time clipping through your boat and flying all over the place, and it's just kind of a huge mess. The most baffling part of the controls is this netting mechanic. So when a big enough fish gets close enough to the boat, you have to catch it in a net. When that happens, this yellow circle appears on the screen. And this yellow circle is, as far as I can tell, just completely uncontrollable. You're supposed to get the fish in the center of the circle, and you can move the circle some with the directional pad, but it just barely seems to move at all. It's stiff and clunky, and the game doesn't explain anything about how to use it ever. It resulted in me failing to catch the largest fish over and over, which is very frustrating. I do think the act of fishing with the Wii's motion controls is inherently fun, and I do think the basic fishing controls in Rapala's fishing tournament are pretty fun, but the game just doesn't make any goddamn sense like half the time. However, Rapala's tournament fishing is only the first fishing game released for the Wii. There will be many more fishing games in the months and years to come, and I will review them all someday, because I am going to review every game ever released for the Nintendo Wii, or die trying. Oh yeah. Woo!